It is time for week 2. This is NFL Betting Blitz. I am Gino Bacola alongside Erik from ETOF21 Sports. Thanks so much, all of you, for joining us. Just starting a few minutes late this week. We will be here every Sunday at 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern Time. And starting next week, we'll have some giveaways for you. You want to make sure you are subscribed to both Erik's YouTube channel and to my YouTube channel as well, because both of them will be giving away free wagers. Everybody likes money. We'll give you a chance to make some money, some free bets. Subscribe to Erik's YouTube channel. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Starting next week, we'll have some giveaways. But Erik, buddy, since we're a little behind, let's get right into the action. One game in the books for week 2, 15 more for us to discuss on Sunday and Monday. These games get started in just over 90 minutes. We've got the betting lines as we look at Bet Online here. The Ravens, a 9-point favorite over the Raiders. Both of these teams lost week 1. And honestly, both of the teams probably feel like they could have won week 1, especially the Raiders. I got to say, man, I didn't know what to think of Antonio Pierce quite yet. I thought last year his time as an interim head coach, he was fine. A little different when you're an interim than when you're the head coach, because I think you kind of feel a little bit more pressure on you sometimes when you're the head coach and when it's your job. And we saw that already right away. They were down 16-10, 7 minutes and 15 seconds left to go in the game. The Raiders are driving. They're on the Chargers 43. They punted. They are the first team to punt in opposing territory, trailing by 1 score in the fourth quarter in 4th and 1 since 2016. We literally haven't seen a team do that in like 9 years. They got stopped in 3rd and 1 and on 4th and 1 earlier in the game. So he kind of felt like, I got to punt this time because I got stopped a couple times earlier. They also missed a field goal. I mean, those are a couple things that really could have flipped the game for them against the Chargers. We saw the Ravens on opening night. They had the chance to win that game. The toe of Isaiah Likely was just out. But the one thing I will say about the Ravens, they got to be a little careful, because in one game, having Lamar rush 16 times, that's fine. You cannot do that every game. That is not sustainable to have him rush more than probably 7-8 times a game, right? Like, he cannot take all those hits.
I agree 100%. And I mean, I think the main thing that people forget about the Thursday night game that happened last week, because it was so long ago, was they need to keep Mark Andrews into block.
Absolutely.
Because of how bad their offensive line is. Now you're doing gets up front with Wilkins, Crosby, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's going to be the same thing. And you hit the nail on the head. You don't want a situation where Jackson is running the ball over 10 times a game. Raiders, pretty good defensively. You need a one-on-one wide receiver that can make plays, a dependable go-getter. And Zay Flowers isn't that guy. He's a little too small for me. He's kind of like a 1B, a 2A type of guy. I really don't think he's a 1A type of guy. That's going to force people to look to, oh, maybe this is Likely. Obviously, one bet that kind of makes sense to me is you take the Likely under, but in this game, I did not do it. It's not as ballooned up as I thought it was going to be. Baltimore was only 30th DVOA against the run. I really think Peters is going to look to get Zamir White established. I know people are a little worried about his production. It was kind of a negative game script, though. They got behind early. They weren't able to run the ball as much as they would like to. I think they're going to look to run the ball more. I think they're going to look to get the ball into Devontae Adams' hands in the passing game, White's hands in the running game. Jackson, 3.5 favorite or more, 41% against the number. 5.5 or more, 40% against the number. And we need to remember that, like I mentioned earlier, the Chiefs' defensive line, minus Jones, all graded out badly in that game per PFF. And the Ravens' defensive line was having trouble defending them. Now, when you look at Wilkins, Butler, and Crosby, all graded in the top 15 of their position, I'm thinking the Ravens are going to have a lot of trouble. I know this is a popular survivor pick. I'd be a little leery. I like the Raiders, and I got it at 9.5. I'd still play it at 9.
Me too. I like the Raiders here in this one. And a lot of these games in week 2, you got to remember, if you were a little higher on some of these teams in week than coming into the year, you want to sort of you got to do the dance a little bit. Like you want to react a little to what you saw in week 1, but you still have to hold true to some of the thoughts that you had preseason. And we were both a little bit higher on the Raiders, their defense. I mean, nothing about the template of that game turned me off the Raiders. They were in that game. They had every chance to win that game. It was a few small decisions. You said, can we now get a little bit more from White? He struggled in just a few spots. Second, third, and fourth down, he had 5 carries and he only gained a total of 2 yards. So that sometimes it's just you're getting some bad touches. I'm expecting a lot more from him this week as well. We're both on the Raiders, and even maybe being a little trepidatious about the survivor play on the Ravens. So we're both on the Raiders plus the points here. Let's move to the Chargers at the Panthers. And this is just another one, Erik, that immediately coming off of week 1, I almost was looking at whoever the Panthers were playing in week 2 and just thinking, okay, you know what? I feel like I'm probably going to have to take the Panthers here because I don't know how good they are, but I do know that nobody is going to want to take the Panthers after what we saw last week when they get absolutely crushed like that. And I don't know. I want to give them 1 or 2 more weeks with the new staff. The Saints aren't quite that good, but you and I both thought the Saints might be a little bit better this year than most. So coming into this game, people are already jumping on look at Harbaugh. He figured everything out with the Chargers, but we kind of went through it. I think the Raiders may have given that game away as much as the Chargers maybe won that game. So I couldn't be laying the 5 with the Chargers in here. Could you get to the Panthers in here, getting a little ugly and dirty right away in week 2?
I got it. I like this in a 6.5. I'd still play it. Anything over 5. Teams that lost by 30 points or more, 59.8% ATS. When they're in the first month, 60% ATS. You and I talk about all the time. Gambling is all about buying low and selling high. And the Panthers had a lot of hype going into the season. That hype's still there. The players are still there. They just ran into a team that is better than these quote unquote experts realized. Teams that lost by 35 points or more, they lost by 37, 66.3% against the number. Just an inflated number here, buying low. I agree with you. I think the Raiders kind of beat themselves. Pace of play of the Chargers, it's going to be a lower possession game. There's not going to be many possessions. Chargers don't play fast. Do you really trust the Chargers? Herbert didn't look like Herbert.
No.
A lot heavier running the ball.
The playmaker is exactly like we thought, right? They couldn't complete passes. They got not lucky, but Dobbins was able to wear down the defense a little bit because these guys are still tired. It's still early in the season. You could see some of that Raiders defense just getting a little worn down late in the game, but there was so little that kind of turned me off of the things that we thought about both of those two teams. So I think coming out of the one game, the Raiders are a little undervalued and the Chargers are a little overvalued.
Oh, 100%. Plus is a low total, high spread.
Yep.
Look, I took the Panthers here. I got it 6.5. Still like at the current 5.5 number.
Yep. We're both on the Panthers in this one. We move to the Saints at the Cowboys. So Cowboys destroy the Browns. But I want to know, was it the Browns or was it the Cowboys? Because we saw the same thing from the Saints. Both of these teams come in where they beat the crap out of their week 1 opponent. I don't think either one of the week 1 opponents were that great, but for the Cowboys, they only had 15 total first downs. They only had 265 total yards and 4.4 yards per play themselves. Here's how they were able to take advantage of the game. Browns turnover, Cowboys kick the field goal. Browns interception, Cowboys score. Punt return touchdown for the Cowboys. Then later in the game, twice in back-to-back drives, Cleveland turns it over on downs, and then the Cowboys kick a field goal off of that. I mean, they really benefited from Cleveland over and over and over, not being able to move the ball. Deshaun Watson looking so bad. I don't know if Dallas is that good or if it was just a really bad week 1 offense with Watson and Dallas able to look a little bit better than that. And then on the Saints, on the flip side, Carr was graded number 1 quarterback of the week last week by Pro Football Focus. And one of the things that you and I mentioned, the new coordinator. So for Peyton, Sean Payton was there in New Orleans with the Saints, 258 total games as the head coach. In those 258 total games, there were 2 times when they scored on their first 9 possessions. Kubiak had the Saints score on their first 9 possessions in his first game as the OC last week. I know that's just a random thing, but it did show you that this team was flowing really well with the offense right away. I thought this number was too big. I thought it should have been closer to like 3.5 or 4. Right now, we're seeing a number up at like 6, 6.5, depending on where you got it. And again, we and me especially liked the Saints coming into this year more than most. I was a little lower on the Cowboys this year than most. So this was a perfect game for me as far as week 2 in finding 2 teams that I think are still off valued a little bit. So I'm going to the dog again here, Erik. I played the Saints.
I kind of set this one out. Like, we don't really know, like, are the Saints offense just better than you and I both thought? We both were high on it, or the Panthers defense that bad? Weird game in Dallas. And another big thing for me, and I was actually looking at the Saints, these athletes are habits of
creatures of
patterns, and the hurricane is coming through. Their practice schedule got a little strained and everything. So I'm just kind of sitting this one out. I just kind of want to see what happens and kind of like go from there. But this is a big game for the Saints. Like, if the Saints win this game, the hype that you and I had is really
real.
good.
Yeah, and
really
because thinking about the way Atlanta looked in week 1 too, right? I think you put those two together because Atlanta was such a heavy favorite in the division. So you get a Saints team that can somehow get to 2-0 right away. Atlanta has to go on the road Monday night and play Philly. They're like almost a touchdown underdog. Cousins didn't look good. So all of a sudden, if the Saints can go to 2-0 and then, the Falcons are 0-2, that's just a huge flip of what the preseason juice and the preseason odds were. So big game. Let's go Saints here. See if they can help our some of our season futures and totals. Lions and the Tampa Bay Bucks. We got a rematch of the playoffs last year. This was the second round between these two teams. And man, I got to say, you got to give a lot of credit to Baker Mayfield. I think what makes that Deshaun Watson situation even worse right now is how well Baker's playing, right? They gave up all that for Watson, all the guaranteed money. He's terrible. And the guy that you actually could have just held on to, he just took the Bucks to the playoffs last year. And Baker actually had the best game of his career by DYAR, which is like the DVOA metric that grades quarterbacks. That's insane. He was the best quarterback of the week, and his average depth of target wasn't great, but he still finished 24 of 30. Pro Football Focus had him graded quarterback 4 of the week. He led Tampa on 5 straight scoring drives to open the game. He's had 2 games out of 18 for Tampa where he's had 4 passing touchdowns and no interceptions. He only had 2 games like that in the first 69 games of his career. So he's comfortable there right now,
I just, in this game, for me, what I did, and for those who don't know, is I rewatch these games from the coach's feed so I can kind of see the whole field and not like what CBS, NBC, et cetera, is showing us. The thing that stood out for me is how Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to be matched up in the slot against a 3rd-round rookie playing in a second game, coming off a game against Jaden Daniels where Jaden Daniels was scared to throw the ball. I think this is a huge Amon-Ra St. Brown game. The whole Lions offense is kind of filtered to go into the middle of the field. For me in this game, the only thing I did is I bet over 79.5 receiving yards for St. Brown. I think it's going to be a big game for him. I wanted to get there with Tampa, but we don't know. Is that the Washington defense? Is the Washington defense?
They might be
bad in the secondary.
Horrible. Yeah, this is a game.
And if you watch divas, or not divas, Jesus, wide receivers.
Is it total divas, or you got the Bellas on the E channel?
If you watch that, Bell is a little bit of a diva. That Bell St. Brown is a little bit of a diva. So I want him over 79.5 yards receiving.
Another just small positive that kind of helps for your prop there. So in week 1, we saw Jamison Williams just kind of take that step forward. So what does that mean? There would just be a little bit more attention on him now, right? Does that just give Amon-Ra a little more room to work? And I think so, because now you have to you point this out all the time, just like in the NBA. When you have a player like a Jameson Williams, you got to be honest and you have to be very aware of him going deep, going long. So you're keeping an eye on that. It's just creating all this space in the middle of the field for Amon-Ra St. Brown. So Erik likes that one in here. I'm staying away. This Lions versus the Bucks. Packers, Colts. This is Malik Willis making the start here. We've got Colts as a 2-point favorite on the road in this game. Yeah, I mean, it's a little worrisome for Green Bay because we've seen Malik Willis before, and he's just not a good thrower of the ball. But Erik, do you think we get some sort of a game plan where, like, we've seen this from Belichick before a few years back, and we've seen it from some other smart coaches? Hey, we're not going to be able to throw the ball that much. This isn't something we're going to have to do all year, but for one game, do we run some sort of like a Navy option kind of thing? Do you think they really make big changes, or do you think they try to have Willis drop back and be a traditional quarterback? Or like, how are we going to approach it here?
The thing that stood out to me for the Colts-Texans game is how much the Colts struggled when you got the ball to the outside. Green Bay switched to an outside zone running blocking scheme. This is going to be what Jacobs is going to have. His rushing prop is only 64.5 yards. So I played this over. I think this is a game where he's going to touch the ball 25 times because of Malik Willis. We need to remember what Malik Willis has shown us is he's able to go in. He went into Arrowhead as a 10-point dog a couple years ago with the Titans and got this game to overtime. I think it's going to be a very similar game plan. I think there's just going to be run. LaFleur as a dog, 67% ATS. Home dog, 71.4% ATS. Look, when we take Rodgers out of the equation, still 56. When you look at Richardson, he's only played 9 games.
Okay, so I think I was reading it between college and the NFL. I believe he's only completed one actual road game.
Yeah, and
one road game.
You look at,
and now he's got to play at Green Bay. This is not an easy road game at all. I think it was 9. What was he, like 9 for 19 passing?
Yeah. He completed 9 passes in an indoor environment against the Texas secondary. Like, this is just I'm going to take the Packers.
It's a principal play.
Is Jordan Love worth 6 points? Because this would be Green Bay laying 3. Is Jordan Love worth 6 points?
And
the answer to me is a hard no.
Is Anthony Richardson a guy who should be favored on the road right now against anybody? I don't think so. Not until we see it a little bit more. And the same thing with this Colts team. They're the type of team who we play right now last week when they're a dog, when they're getting some points, because they can punch up. They're not the type of team I want to need to cover on the road with a rookie quarterback or a second-year quarterback who hasn't even had a full season worth of starts, who could be making mistakes quite a bit here. So I'm with you. It feels like the Packers is really the only place to play this. If you're going to play it, either Packers at home or you're staying away because you're just not sure. We go Browns at the Jags. Man, that Jags game last week was so disappointing for me, backing them money line. They still covered the 3.5. The Jags are up 17-7. They are beating the crap out of the Dolphins. Everything that we had predicted. 2 minutes left in the third quarter. Etienne is walking into the end zone, and he gets the ball punched out of his hands. And instead of going up 24-7, the Dolphins get the ball, and I tweeted it out. Incoming Dolphins touchdown immediately. The next play, 80-yard bomb from Tua to Hill. And if you played the Jags, you knew immediately the moment Etienne fumbled that ball in the end zone, you were in some trouble on the money line. And that one was a stinger because it was one that was like Jags over win total, Jags to win the division, Dolphins under win total. And then the money, like all those bets came down to that one game. Now, after I got my gripe session out, the Jags looked solid. Like for most of the game, they ran the ball pretty well. It was only after that turnover that things really flipped for them. This Browns team, they looked really, really bad. The problem is, Erik, this is one of those games where I think the overreaction to the Browns was probably a little too much. Man, I mean, there's not a lot you can say positively about Watson when you really go through everything. I mean, it's the question I'll ask to you is, why do you think he's so bad right now? Because it's not like he had an ACL injury, right? When he got suspended, it was for off the field stuff. Is this all like a mental thing, or do you think they're like it's so
all
weird
timing,
to me?
Mike.
Yeah,
It's all timing. Like, we need to remember there's a laundry list. Le'Veon Bell comes to mind. He set out because of contract. Like,
Yep.
you use that whole year of just not being out there, not competing, that adds up. And that's what's happening to him. I'm still a big Watson guy. I still have faith in him that he's going to be able to do some stuff. Obviously, in terms of this game, what I did is I just played the Amari Cooper over rushing yard prop. Receiving yard prop. I believe I got it. It was insanely discounted too, coming off the disastrous game. I got it at over 58 and a half yards. The way the Jags run defense is it's a pass funnel system. They're very stout against the run. They're fine with you dinking and dunking, picking up 7-10 yards. They just don't want to have the big play, and they don't want to give anything. And then when it gets to the red zone, then they'll like kind of pick up their D, if that makes sense. They won't let you get the run game going. They make you beat you with the pass. Now the Jags are going to be without Tyson Campbell, our best DB. Amari Cooper, if he catches that long touchdown, this prop is going to be a lot higher against this Jags defense. I bet him over 58 and a half yards receiving.
Yeah, I'm as someone who just likes the Jags a little bit this year, I was pleased with what I saw. This game is just one of those weird overreaction games where, like, I feel like the right side to be is on the Brown side, but I'm having a tough time, Erik, because I was in watching that game. Like, I don't know. I'm more out on Watson because I'm starting to get concerned with the guys around him, like the locker room. There was a play or two where, like, he went to help up one of his offensive linemen and the guy didn't even want to grab Watson's hand. I don't know if I was just looking into something or reading into something, but there was another allegation that came out this week. And the problem with them, they can't do anything. People are like, just cut Deshaun Watson now. That would be $119 million dead cap hit this year. Next year, $80 million dead cap hit.
Yeah.
You can't just cut him. There's just no way. And when you look at, unfortunately, what you gave up, they traded 6 draft picks, 3 first rounders. Houston got Will Anderson, Damian Pierce, Kalen Bullock, Tank Dell, an offensive lineman, 2 more defensive linemen, 2 DBs, a linebacker, a tight end, 5 starters last year out of all those picks from Watson, and they still have a second round pick this year coming. So that was
which is insane. Which is absolutely insane.
So let's say goodbye to the Browns in this one and the Jags, and we move along to the 49ers Vikings. We know that McCaffrey is going to be put on IR. We just need him to play a couple games because you and I were kind of sniffing into that in the preseason totals with some of his rushing yards, and they were really boosted high, and he had really good injury luck coming into this year. And now right off the bat, he's going to be banged up. I thought this is a sneaky game for the Vikings just because if we remember last year, the Flores defense performed really well against San Francisco. That was one of the games that the 49ers lost last year, and Purdy looked really kind of off, and he looked confused by all the blitzes that Flores throw at you because he's so different with what he does. He throws all these different blitz looks at you, and if you can kind of calm and respond well to it, then you can start to pick it apart. But it's a little bit difficult when you haven't seen it all that much. And I was really impressed with Sammy Darnold, seeing some ghosts. You don't want to overreact to that, but I think the combination of strong, little different defense for the Vikings here to throw at the 49ers. The 49ers don't have another one of their big weapons, and they have to come on the road here. I thought that the Vikings might be the side in here. Do you have an opinion, 49ers Vikings?
Yeah, I had nothing. I want nothing to do with this game. Nothing to do.
Good.
Nothing to do.
Beautiful. Sammy Darnold, hopefully no more ghosts to see as you looked really good last week. What about the Patriots Seahawks, Erik? Patriots are a 3-point home dog. Stevenson ran the ball well last week, 120 yards on 25 carries. Basically, that was the template for how the Patriots are going to win games this year, right? They're going to run the ball. Their defense is going to play well, and they're going to get a little bit lucky with like 1 or 2 turnovers. The Bengals were another team that fumbled the ball going into the end zone. That flipped the game a little bit, right?
Yeah, I mean, Bengals had not 1 but 2 blown touchdowns.
Yep.
This game, obviously, I just be careful on both sides. Like, this is another game I don't want anything to do. Obviously, I think Cabernet in your DFS lineups, because he's so underpriced, is obviously a no-brainer. Look to take Cabernet in that. And, I just, again, you have a team traveling from west to east, laying points. You have that trend. Everyone thinks the Patriots are bad. Seahawks really didn't look that good.
Oh, and their offensive line was miserable. They were really sloppy. They had 2 safeties to start the game early on. And both times they had to start from their 1-yard line, safety.
Yeah, and Walker's out, as I mentioned. For me, this is just, I want nothing to do with this game.
Yeah, so notable inactive so far for today: Kenneth Walker, Jake Ferguson, Josh Downs, Conklin, DJ Reed for the Jets, Jaden Reed, Josh Palmer, both in so far. Marshawn Lattimore out. Jameson Williams is active. Just going through some of the officials and unofficials. Kyle Van Noy active. So we'll pass along any others to you as we get them. I agree, Erik. I kind of wanted to fade the Seahawks this week. Kind of wanted to fade the Patriots a little bit. Feels like the Patriots are probably the better spot, but I would want more than the 3. Like, I'd want at least the 3 and a hook here if I was taking the Patriots side. So I'm staying away from this one. I'm not staying away from the next game because this, to me, is another one of those overreaction games. The Titans were up 17-0. They end up losing, not covering, plus 4.5 to a Bears team that did not score an offensive touchdown and had less than 150 total yards.
Yeah, I mean,
unbelievable.
To me, I'm gonna give an old school reference. Have you ever seen the movie She's All That with Rachel Lee Cook?
Of course I have. Freddie Prinze Jr. is one of my all-time favorites.
The dorky girl who, after a couple of changes, becomes smoking hot.
Yep.
To me, that's the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah.
They have all the pieces there.
Yep.
I don't think they realize how good they actually are. Defense dominant against the Bears, winning the point of attack. Now they're facing a Jets offensive line that was pushed around by the 49ers. I think the Titans defensive line will be able to get to Rodgers, and Hall have a hard time against this front. Plus, if they're able to get to Rodgers, I don't see a 40-year-old coming off a major injury being able to avoid this pass rush. Titans were graded out as the 6th best defense per DVOA. Titans offensive line took a huge jump with the hiring of Callahan as their offensive line coach, and the zone running scheme that he's running is the exact same as the 49ers. And the Niners averaged 4.7 yards per carry. So Lou's defense needs a pass rusher. Harrison Riddick is not playing. He's holding out. So, I mean, that's just a huge knock to the Jets defense. Gardner got banged up. Jets have offensive line issues. Come the end of the year, look, Jets are getting hyped. Maybe they're this great team. Right now, they are not. Some trends. Teams that played on the Monday Night Football West Coast and then played a game in the early time in the East or West time zone are 30% against the number. In September, the last 20 years, teams 1 to 3.5 point favorites, 43% against the spread. Since 2019, 42%. Sorry, since 2014, 42%. Since 2019, 39.6%. Teams that opened at 4 points or higher at home in weeks 1 or 2, 58%. Since 2020, teams that opened at 4 or higher after losing their previous game, 62%. But this is the kicker. Teams that blew a 10-point lead the following game, 62% against the number like the Titans did. Titans, I think I got it at 3.5. I don't know what it's at right now, but
I'm fine. Anything over the 3 myself as well. Yeah, I completely agree with you. This was just the Jets on a short week. We're just not sure how good the Jets coaching staff is. The Titans did what they wanted early. I mean, if Levis doesn't have one of the worst turnovers that you ever see a quarterback have when he's falling over and flips it to the opposite team for a touchdown the other way, the Titans might win and definitely cover that game. I completely agree with you. There's a funny quote from their coach Callahan. He said, if we had just punted on 1st and 10 every time, we might have won the game. So I think they're going to clean some things up this week as we move to our next game. Erik, the one thing last week that I just kind of took note on, both the Giants and Commanders, they didn't look fantastic. The Giants got beat up by the Vikings, but the Commanders, man, Dan Quinn might have a really long year this year defensively, just because he's a defensive guy, and this team is awful defensively. Washington is so bad. And their offense, it was just mainly Daniels running, like a lot of his rushing, 88 yards. They really couldn't throw the ball down the field at all. The leading receivers were the backs. All of the running backs, they just had dump offs, 52 yards and 49 yards receiving. McLaurin only had 17. The DVOA, they were dead last. Or the DVOA were 31st in defensive DVOA. They were dead last in EPA per play, dead last in EPA per dropback. The secondary was terrible. And then on the Giants side, my first note was, as I'm watching the games on Sunday, I'm got like my 3 or 4 screens set up, and I'll type in notes just from things that I say, and then I'll go back after like you, and I'll do the rewatch of the coach or the all 22 film. And my first note for the Giants was bad vibes. They didn't look good. They didn't feel good. Apparently bad vibes in the locker room after all the Dable, Wink Martindale stuff last year. Daniel Jones is not great. And you could feel them not having Barkley there to lean on, kind of that leader, that guy that was the center of their offense. All that being said, I look at this situation like, I mean, if you're giving me any points with the home team in this situation where I think there are 2 bad teams, I would probably take that. Do you have an opinion here one way or the other with Washington or the Giants? I end up staying away.
Okay, so what has Jaden Daniels done his whole career? He's thrown deep to the X receiver outside. What didn't he do last game? He didn't do that.
Yep.
Now, I watched the game footage. McLaurin was open multiple times. He had that touchdown that, like, he should have scored there. But Daniels overthrew him. Daniels has just had a whole week of saying you got to get the ball to Terry McLaurin. So if you have 6 days, 7 days, and you're a young 20-some-year-old, and you have your coaches saying you have to get this guy the ball, what does that mean? You're going to throw him the ball even when he's covered. Daniels did look scared to throw the ball, so I'm a little bit worried about that. But his receiving yard total is 48 and a half. When was the last time you saw a total this low in a number 1 wide receiver in the NFL? He's probably a top 15 wide receiver in the league. So I got Terry McLaurin over the 48 and a half yards receiving.
I like that one. Yeah, no real for me. I kind of hemming and hawing a little bit, but I'll stay away and see if we can get a better feel for what these 2 teams are right now. Rammies at the Cardinals. Right now we're seeing this game around a pick'em. Cardinals are the home team here. Murray had a great start. He was 16 for 19 passing, 131 yards in the first half, 4 carries, 28 yards. They had 14 first downs. They were up 17-10 against the Bills, but they only had 4 first downs in the second half. And Marvin Harrison Jr. did not get many looks at all. I think this might be another situation, kind of like what you were saying. All week we've heard, is Marvin Harrison Jr. slow? He looked really slow out there. I think they're going to have at least some packages and some focus on him early in the game. For the Rams, Stafford, it was such an awesome Stafford game last week. Puka was out. They had a banged-up offensive line. He threw a red zone interception in the first half, and in the second half, he's just making huge plays. He got hit 12 times and pressured 14 times. He got sacked twice. Kind of a weird way I came out of that game for the Rams. I don't mind that they losing on the road to Detroit in overtime. That's not a bad loss. The Lions are one of the better teams in the league. And I think because of the history that the Lions and the Rams have, those 2 teams play each other very well and very tough. Where I'm worried, though, Erik, is, I mean, the Rams look like a team in week 15 with their offensive line right now. Like, they have real issues out their offensive line, but is Arizona the team to take the most advantage of it? That's kind of where I'm going back and forth.
I want nothing to do with this game. Arizona does fit the 10-point trend. They were up by 10. Arizona, to me, looked like a team that didn't practice with pads on during the offseason. Murray floating a lot of passes. I think he does look to get Harrison established. Flip side, your Rams are insanely banged up on the offensive line. Whichever one of these teams loses, I'm going to be heavily invested in week 3, but right now I want nothing to do with it.
Yeah, it feels like a stay away for me also. We go to the Bengals at the Chiefs. Worthy was a nice weapon for the Chiefs. 3 touches, 68 yards, a couple touchdowns in week 1. They just look solid. Defense was able to withstand a big game from Lamar. Those guys were, man, looking at some of the Chiefs defenders at the end of that game, they were so tired. Could you imagine in your first game of the year when you're not really in shape and you have to chase Lamar around 16 times? That's just, you're not going to have many games like that where you're having to chase someone like Lamar around all that often. But then you have the Bengals. They're just so bad to start the season. They're 1-5 in season openers, 1-10 in the first 2 weeks of the year under Zach Taylor. They went 3 and out on their first 3 drives. Like, how are you not prepared? I can understand the years when Burrow wasn't in training camp, but this year he was. But you didn't have Chase, right? Chase was sitting out. Higgins was hurt. So they haven't had their full complement of players. And there is still that weird energy with Chase not getting paid. So I'm not sure if everything's great with them, but they've always played really well at Arrowhead, and they've always played the Chiefs really well. But this is a team that they've only averaged less than 20 points per game on offense in September with Joe Burrow, 19.3 points. And then in October, November, December, they average at least 25 points a game. Just a way different team with more reps. But Erik, you were pointing it out. They lost 2 fumbles that they could have scored on. Last year, they only lost 2 fumbles the whole season. They actually had the record for the least amount of fumbles by any team since 2000. That is regression to the mean, right? Something like that happens, and then in the first game, you have a couple that bounce the opposite way from you. I don't think I could be on the Chiefs side here. If anything, I would be on the Bengals side. How about you? Is this number good enough for you? Did you lock it in, or how do you see this game?
I got it at 6. I say it all the time, betting about buying low, selling high. I'm buying the Bengals. Burrow as a dog, 61.9%, getting 3.5 or more, 72.7%. Burrow off a loss in his career, just 54%. That's either way. Mahomes, say it all the time. As a favorite, under 3, we play him. Anything above that, we fade him. 45% against the spread. I know everyone talks about Reed off of extended rest, but when you take out his time with the Eagles and look what he's done with the Chiefs, he's negative ROI. Bengals haven't been playing, so of course they look rusty. As much as everyone wants to say preseason football doesn't matter, the Bengals were a clear example of a team that needs preseason football. Week 1 looked like a preseason game to them. My big takeaway from Thursday Night Football was how bad the Ravens offense was. They literally had no one to protect. Per PFF, the Bengals offensive line is playing better than the Ravens offensive line. If this team's able to give Burrow time, I think he's going to be able to do something against
The Chiefs D.
The Chiefs D. Mahomes' struggle against the Bengals defense only averaged 271.3 yards per game, only 1 game over 300 yards. Kelsey hasn't looked good either, 48 yards per game, having only 1 TD. Burrow has done great against the Spaz defense, 313 yards a game, 3 TD to 1 INT ratio. Chase has done well against the Chiefs defense with Snead shadowing him, averaging 9 catches, 103 yards per game. Now McDuffie is going to be guarding him. Off a week of practice, getting more in shape, more in condition. You know what I mean? It just makes sense. Chase is going to absolutely go off this lane. Ravens really don't have a pass rusher, and they're able to take advantage of the Chiefs' issues at tackle. Hendricks is going to be lining over there. If Hendricks is able to have his way with either one of the right or the left tackle, then you're going to have to leave Kelsey or bring in Watson. to help block. That's just going to totally disrupt the flow. Everything went wrong for the Bengals. Look, and the line moved 2.5 points. Bengals had not one but 2 touchdowns that should have got in, and the line moved 2 points. Look, to me, this is just a buy and low point. I think the Bengals bounce back. I think they're insanely undervalued. I'll take the Bengals here +6. I think this just comes down to a field goal type game.
Couple things to mention before we get to our last few games. Erik, for all the folks out there that are fans of horse racing, Belmont at the Big A just opened up this weekend. So make sure you head to shop.drf.com. Everything you need, past performances, DRF picks, clocker reports for the meet. Belmont at the Big A. Next week, it's the Pennsylvania Derby at Park. So they'll have big races there. And then a couple weeks from now, Santa Anita will open up. They will have on September the 28th, the California Crown. It's a new race. It's going to be like a big deal. They're going to try to have it similar to the Pegasus World Cup. They'll have a few big races that day. There's going to be a huge handicapping tournament. And if you want to try to qualify for that tournament, you can do so today for just $40. You go to Xpressbet.com. There's a $40 feeder. If you win a spot from this contest, it puts you in a $300 game, and then you get a seat in that $6,000 entry game. So for just $40, you can win a $6,000 entry. Check out all the details today at Xpressbet. If you ever have any questions about those contests, just let me know. I'd be happy to help give you the specifics and let you know how to get in there. So 3 more games, Erik, to discuss. Let's hit on the Steelers at the Broncos. Steelers come off of a week 1 win against the Falcons. Broncos kind of looked exactly what you'd expect with a rookie quarterback, right? I mean, they were not able to throw the ball down the field at all. The more that we see him and the more that I hear him talk and the way that he was last year with Russ, you and I were right as time goes on about Peyton. He was overrated. He did not do as much with Breeze as he should have in New Orleans. And you just see him. He seems smug. I didn't like the way he handled all the Russ stuff last year. And he even made a comment after this game that was like kind of throwing Knicks under the bus already. All that being said, this is a weird game, man, because this feels like one of those games that the Steelers lose when they're favored on the road. They're like, it looks like an easy game for them. We just assume, the Steelers defense is so good. They're going to give Bo Nix so much trouble. But I don't know if the Steelers should be favored on the road by many teams, like especially at a place like Denver that's not easy to play. I ended up hemming and hawing. I wouldn't lay this with the Steelers, but I don't know if I could get there with the Broncos. I probably need 3.5 to jump in on the Denver side. What did you do in this game?
I took the Broncos here. I got them at 3. I say it every week. Tomlin is a dog we love. As a favorite, we fade him. Favorite, 46.8% ATS. Road favorite, 44.6% ATS. As a road favorite laying 3 or higher, he is 40.4%. As a road favorite off a win, 29.4%. Surtain is going to be shadowing Pickens. Thus, that makes Fields have to beat him on their feet with Jefferson, Austin, or Freiermuth. I think this benefits the Broncos defense, the way the Broncos have that wide 9 concept. Seattle did with Walker behind Cross running to the outside. The Steelers tackles aren't that good. They didn't grade. Cross grade is one of the best tackles out last week. I don't think they're going to have that success running to the outside, running behind Moore or Jones, because they're just not going to be able to set that edge. The other thing is, we say it, the Arthur Smith factor. Cordell Patterson had more rushing attempts than Jalen Warren. He had 2 times more rushing attempts.
He loves him some Patterson, doesn't he?
In what world should that be happening?
So the Steelers won with 6 field goals. Here's the drives for 4 of them. 31 yards, 18 yards, 24 yards, and 11 yards. Those were the drives they had to go to kick those field goals.
And I just think he's going to have a plan. I think Payton's going to keep Durich in have played 2 tackles. You know what I mean? To just make Watt uncomfortable. He's going to scheme it. Even if Porter takes out Cortland Sutton, you have Mims, everybody else. I think this is just a good. I think it's a good opportunity for excuse me, for the Broncos here. I'll take them. I got them at +3.
Couple big pieces of information to pass along. Jags tight end Evan Ingram suffered a hamstring injury during pregame warmups. He's out for today's game.
Oh, geez, dude. I have him on my team, dude.
How about this? Eagles wide receiver A.J. Brown is out for Monday night already. So I have a team. I have a guillotine league team that has A.J. Brown, Evan Ingram, and Kenneth Walker all on the team that I'm going to get knocked out this week.
Is that the one?
I'm in 2 guillotine leagues. The other one that I'm in, I'm going to have to go right now. I have A.J. Brown, Ken Walker, and Evan Ingram all on that team.
I have Josh Allen, and I am like stressing like no wonder because I know if I get eliminated within the first 2 weeks, I'm going to get so much shit.
Razzed. You're going to get razzed. And last week, I was going to get eliminated until I got some garbage time, I think, from Ford late. That really helped me. So it was nice. But yeah, monitor some of those really, really important skill position players that won't be playing. 2 more games for us to discuss, Sunday and Monday night. Sunday night football. Caleb Williams looked terrible last week, but they get a win. There were only 2 quarterbacks in modern NFL history that have attempted over 25 passes in their debut and threw for less than 100 yards. Caleb Williams is one. I'll give you you want to guess the other. So only other quarterback that attempted 25 passes in the debut threw for less than 100 yards. He was a starter last year and is not a starter anymore.
It's Trubisky.
Desmond Ridder.
Oh.
Trubisky was a good guess, though. It was a good guess. It was right in that vein.
And look, in terms of this game, if I didn't bet anything. Like I always kind of hold off on the Sunday night game to kind of see how the days goes. The one guy I kind of had circled for props is just Tank Dell. You have Johnson, who's going to be on Diggs, big Nico Collins game last week, so the Bears will roll coverage to him. Johnson locking up Diggs. That's going to lock up Dell for stuff in the middle of the field. Hard to trust Caleb Williams going on the road after winning a game the way they did. Look, I'm not high on this Houston team. I don't know if they cover this game, but to me in Survivor, I'm somehow still alive in Circa, just trucking along. I'm going to be on Houston here. So in Circa, I'll look to do some Tank Dell props, probably, depending on how the day goes. But right now, I'm just sitting clear of this game.
Yeah, this is another one I'm going to stay away from too, because Caleb's not going to look that bad, but some rookies just do. Like he will be better than that, whether it be to this week, next year. I don't know if he's going to be an all-pro quarterback. He's certainly just not as bad as that one game of sample size was. But I mean, we've seen Peyton Manning and really good quarterbacks look bad for a year. So I would just expect him to be a lot more comfortable in this game, though. We'll stay away from that one. Monday Night Football, Eagles, Falcons. Eagles looked really good, even with Hurts being awful. Hurts had 2 aborted snaps, only 3 yards per carry. He had 3 carries on 1st and 10, -3 yards, 2 yards, and 1 yard. He was graded quarterback 34 out of 35 quarterbacks in passing grade last week. He was dead last in overall offensive grade. He was worse than Bryce Young and Levis. And they still won. That shows you a lot. Even with the mistakes that Hurts was making, Barkley was really, really good. Falcons. This is a hard one for me because I would always be on the Falcons in this game. But the only reason why I'm staying away, and I'm not playing the Eagles, is because I'm not sure Kirk Cousins is healthy or maybe ever is going to get back to the point where he was. Him and Rodgers both. You could see with them, their arm strength is fine. They can't move. They can't move at all. They cannot move their feet around. They cannot throw on the run. They can't get out of the pocket, really. So I don't know what to expect from this team. I honestly thought that Penix would have probably been a better option than what they were getting from Cousins last week. And maybe that's just a game or two of getting over the mental block, right? Maybe Cousins will look a lot better this week, but keep in mind, this is primetime Kirk Cousins too, right? Where he's been terrible.
Sometimes the best bet is no bet.
Bet.
There's nothing I want to do in this game.
I completely agree with you.
I mean, like, look, The intriguing one, if you were to kind of look back and say, hey, you know what, I want a little sniff, I want a little taste. I know everyone is going to go to Dotson. Oh, this is going to be a Dotson game. Dotson's going to be the guy that comes in for Brown. Dotson is a slot wide receiver. The guy that's going to play for Brown is Johnny Wilson. Johnny Wilson's going to be the guy that lines him up, the star wide receiver from Florida State. Enticing props. I mean, if they're in the 30s, I'll look to go to him because this is an offense designed to take shots downfield. Smith and Dotson aren't big X receivers that can high point a ball. That's Johnny Wilson. So I'll probably get in some Johnny Wilson props, but as of right now, I am staying away from this one, my friend.
Just keep in mind that in week 1, the most bet teams based on ticket count, the Dolphins -3.5, the Titans +4, the Bills +7 did not cover. The 3 teams most bet based on money, the Titans +4, the Panthers +4, the Bengals -7.5. None of them covered in last week. So early on in the season, be very cautious, be very monitor the movement. Try to just get the best value that you can anytime this is a fun overreaction week. Erik and I will be back later in the week to preview everything early on my show. This past week was a little bit off. I kind of took a little mini vacation because with Del Mar and Saratoga ending, I had a day to go over to Vegas and hang out with a couple of my buddies for a bachelor party there. So we'll be back with the middle of the week preview for my show. We'll probably do that on Thursday this week, and then we'll always have the Sunday morning get you set for everything here at 11 a.m. Next week, we'll start our giveaways. So subscribe to Erik's YouTube channel, subscribe to mine, because we'll be doing giveaways for people that follow both of those YouTube channels. Good luck, my friend. Week 2 is one of my favorite weeks just because all of those overreactions. I'm playing a lot of dogs this week.
Me too. Good luck to you, and hopefully it's a profitable day.
Well, remember, all dogs go to heaven. And Erik, if we can get the Titans home, I'm going to be singing "Kiss Me Beneath the Milky Twilight." Little She's All That for you. Hope everyone has a great Sunday. Good luck with all your plays.